Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here to bring you the very first look of anybody, at least overseas, when it comes to the brand new Viltrox 85mm F1.8. This is an autofocusing lens with an STM motor, but it's not the one for Fuji X mount, APS-C. This is instead one that is designed for Sony full-frame mirrorless. And so this is designed, I'll be testing it on a Sony a7R Mark III. And so this represents the lowest cost of entry that I'm aware of, period, for an autofocusing 85mm lens. You can get this lens, its MSRP is $379 US, which makes it an incredible bargain for an autofocusing lens with a fantastic build quality. Now, over the next couple of episodes, both today we'll be looking at the build and the handling, some of the specs here, but we'll also be looking at some photos from the lens. Beyond that, however, in a subsequent episode, I'll be looking at autofocus performance, image quality, and then also giving you my final verdict on the lens. But obviously, this provides an alternative. While Sony does have an excellent autofocus 85mm f1.8 lens, that lens is closer to the $600 price range, and so this represents a chance for those of you that are on a more limited budget to add an 85mm lens for a fairly small investment. And so I've already done a review of the manual focus 85mm version from Viltrox, as you can see here. And just for kind of a size comparison, I have a lens designed for DSLRs. This is the Tamron 85mm f1.8. It does add VC or image stabilization. This lens does not have image stabilization. However, on a body like my Sony a7R Mark III, it is fully supported for the in-body image stabilization, so it functions in a similar fashion to that of the Tamron. So why don't we jump in and let's take a closer look at the actual design, handling here, and some of the features that are a part of this lens. Let's jump in, let's take a look. So taking a look here, I've got the new Viltrox AF version, autofocus with an STM focus motor, and then I've got the manual focus version that I reviewed not that long ago. Now, I expected these lenses to be, kind of identical, and, while there is some commonality, they both have a 72mm front filter thread, and so there is some similarity when it comes to the front kind of view of the lens. Looks like the lens hood is identical on both of them. So looking here, looks somewhat similar, but the rest of the lens profile is actually completely different. The manual focus version is a little bit slimmer. This has a thicker barrel and obviously a much bigger focus ring on it. And this, of course, is a focus by wire focus system, whereas, of course, this is a full manual focus, and it has hard stops. So this is the the nicer focus ring. And I noted in my review of the manual focus, it has a beautiful manual focus ring. I will note, however, that surprisingly, they've done a really good job with this particular focus ring, even though it's STM and focus by wire. First of all, if you're shift into manual focus, or if you are in DMF mode and you start to do input here, you do get magnification of the image in the viewfinder or the LCD screen, which certainly aids in focus. Also, they've done a good job with the damping on this. There's no hard stops, obviously, because it's not mechanically coupled to the elements, but the feel is actually quite good. This is another really beautifully made lens from Viltrox. It is all metal, very, very dense construction, very high grade, very Zeiss-like really in a lot of ways when it comes to that. The trade-off for that, however, comes down in the actual weight of the lens. It is not a light lens, once again, and so on my scale here, we come out to 615 grams, which is a little bit below the listed weight, but maybe if we throw the caps on, we'll get up to the list weight, which is 636 grams. So I mean, on my scale, it's a little bit in between. But we'll just do this for similarity's sake. Let's throw this manual focus on there. We see that the manual focus lens is heavier yet. And so they have managed to give you autofocus and a slightly lighter lens, even though the physical side looks a little bit larger. So interesting, not necessarily what you would expect. As noted up front, we have a 72mm filter thread, and it does come with the lens hood included. I will note that the action of the bayonet here is not the smoothest that I've encountered. If there's any weak spot in the build quality, it is that. It feels like it doesn't quite engage properly, and so it's just a little bit rough in connect and disconnect. On a positive note, the actual caps themselves are really, really nice. I mean, there's basically as nice as anything that I'm seeing. Maybe Tamron's cap is a hair nicer, but it's just, you know, it's branded, it looks good, it operates good. Also, the rear is branded here as well. They do have a micro USB port on here to where you can apply firmware updates to the lens itself. So that's certainly good to see that they have been, you know, kind of proactive when it comes to that. There are electronic contacts, and as you'll see, there is no manual aperture ring. There is no switches on the lens itself. Everything is controlled from within the camera. Now, if we open up the box that it comes in, it comes nicely presented. It does have a bit of a pouch here, a warranty card, and then the lens itself is contained in kind of a custom molded section wrapped inside there. And so, you know, they get good marks for presentation, particularly since even a little quality control sticker there. And so positives when it comes to that. Now, looking at some of the other basic dimensions of the lens itself, we've got MTF here, but you can also see when it comes to the diameter is 3.15 inches or 80 millimeters. The length is 100 millimeters, or, you know, more standard is 92 millimeters. That's without the lens cap, and that's what typically they're listed at, or 3.62 inches. And so 1.38 pounds, and the listing of 626 grams, which, you know, is fairly close to what I got when it comes to that. The minimum focus distance here is 0.8 meters or 80 centimeters, and that breaks down to about 2.62 feet. And there you have a reproduction ratio of 1:8 or a 0.12 times, which is about middle of the pack for an 85 millimeter lens, nothing all that unusual. The optical formula is 10 elements in 7 groups, which is actually it's a little bit different, not necessarily more complex than the Sony 85 millimeter F1.8, which is 9 elements in 8 groups. You also have a 9 rounded aperture blade aperture iris, but you can see when it's stopped down a fair bit, as it is here, that the aperture is not entirely round. Now, there is no weather sealing on the lens other outside of a coating on the front element, but the lens itself, it is a beautifully, beautifully made, I mean, and a beautifully handling lens that I'm really actually very impressed at, particularly when you consider the price point. And so, as you can see, this is a really beautifully made lens that has a very high build grade. And while it is a little bit more physically robust than what the manual focus version, they did somehow manage to shave a little bit of weight out of it. And so while it is you know, fairly heavy, it exceeds the weight of the Sony lens by several hundred grams. Of course, it also has a far more robust build quality to it than what that Sony lens does. But I'm sure what you're even more interested in is seeing some photos. So as I wrap things up here, I'll continue to throw some up. But you can also take a look at the image gallery that I'm adding to on a daily basis right now. And I'll throw a link to that in the description down below. And so you can get a feel for the lens. Now, I will be taking a quick look at whether or not these lenses are identical optically. The optical formula is similar. However, since I can tell you I've already done some tests, they don't behave identically. And so we'll take a closer look at that and how it plays out as a part of that final review. So stay tuned for that. There's also buying links in the description down below if you'd like to order some for yourself. And of course, I know you're going to be interested in, as I was, in how this lens performs when it comes to autofocus. And I'll really delve into that in our final episode. As always, you can find linkage in the description down below to follow me on social media, including on Instagram. Also, there's links there to become a patron and to get sneak previews of upcoming content before anybody else. You can sign up for my newsletter. And of course, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.